In December of 2023, a candidate running for President of the United States stood in a town hall in New Hampshire, and a voter asked her a simple question. She talked for almost a minute about the role of government, about freedom, and in the entire answer, she never once said the word slavery.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you.
Please, what was the cause of the United States Civil War?
Well, don't come with an easy question, right? I mean, I think the cause of the Civil War was basically how government was going to run, the freedoms and what people could and couldn't do. What do you think the cause of the Civil War was? I'm sorry?
I'm not running for president. I wanted to see your view on the cause of the.
The clip went everywhere within hours, and almost everyone read it the same way. One politician, one bad night. But it stuck with me for a different reason. It bothered me more than it probably should have. Not because she had gotten something wrong, because the silence felt familiar. I had heard it before. I just could not place where. So I went looking, and I ended up somewhere I had not expected. The Constitution of the United States. Roughly 4,500 words that still govern the country today. I figured the word had to be in there somewhere, so I read it looking for it. Slavery, slave, enslaved, anything. Nothing. It is not in there, not once. I actually went back and read it again because I was sure I had missed it. I had not. The men who wrote the founding charter of the United States could not bring themselves to write the word down. A country that, in that very moment, held hundreds of thousands of human beings in bondage, and its founding document will not say so out loud. That is when I realized this was not really about Nikki Haley anymore. It was about a habit, a silence this country has kept since its very first sentence, about the thing it refused to name. That silence is where this story starts, and it never really ended. This is the story of how America spent the first half of its life looking away from the thing buried underneath it. The first thing I wanted to know was how big this actually was. I had been taught slavery the way most of us were, as a chapter. A dark chapter, but a chapter. Something off to the side of the real American story. So I went looking for the numbers, expecting a footnote. I expected a chapter. It turned out to be the book. Take the very first census, 1790. Nearly 700,000 people in this country were owned by other people. In a nation of under 4 million, that is close to 1 in 5. Not 1 in 100, 1 in 5. And it did not last a moment. Slavery was legal on this land for 246 years. Sit with that number. This country has existed as a slave-holding nation for longer than it has been a free one. The Capitol building, where Congress meets. The White House, where the president lives. Both were built in part by enslaved workers. The seat of American liberty was constructed by people who had none. And the man who wrote that all men are created equal, Thomas Jefferson, enslaved more than 600 people across his lifetime. He freed only a few. So, this was not a dark corner of the American story. For the first half of the country's life, it was a load-bearing wall. The wealth, the politics, the expansion of the country itself, all of it rested on slavery. Which left me with the one question I could not get around. How did the men who wrote that all men are created equal build a country that ran on the opposite of it? So I followed it back to the room where the bargain was struck. Winning the war had not created a country. It had created 13 of them. They had won their independence. Now they had to find out if they could survive it. Financially crippled, barely holding together, and by 1786, armed farmers were openly rebelling against their own state governments. Many of the country's own leaders believed the experiment might already be failing. So in the summer of 1787, they met in Philadelphia. Officially, just to patch up the broken system. Instead, behind closed doors, they threw it out and built a new one from scratch. And here's the thing to hold on to. They were not sitting down to design the perfect government. They were not dreaming about the future. They were trying to keep the present from falling apart. The Constitution did not emerge on its own. It was negotiated, line by line. So picture that room. 13 states that agree on almost nothing, trying to become one country before it comes apart. And there was one question in that room that could end the whole thing before it began. Everyone understood it. No one wanted to say it. Slavery. The Deep South, mainly South Carolina and Georgia, made their position simple. Touch slavery and we walk. There is no country without us. So the men in that room made a choice. They chose the country. And I kept asking myself how you even do that, how you buy a country with a thing like this. The answer is that you do not do it all at once. You do it in 3 pieces. First came the question of who counts. Enslaved people could not vote. They had no rights at all. But they would be counted, each one as 3/5 of a person, when deciding how many seats their owner's state got in Congress and how many votes it got for president. The more human beings a state held in chains, the more power its slaveholders got in Washington. Slavery was not just surviving inside American democracy. It was wired into the arithmetic of it. Then they protected the trade. Congress was forbidden in writing from ending the importation of enslaved people for 20 years. 2 full decades where the Atlantic slave trade was guaranteed by the Constitution itself. And finally, they answered the question no one in that room wanted to say out loud. What happens when a person runs? The Fugitive Slave Clause. If an enslaved person escaped to a free state, that state was constitutionally required to send them back, which meant freedom had no geography. There was no line on this continent you could cross and simply be free. And look again at those 3 clauses. Read them today. The word slavery is still not there. Not even here. Not even in the parts of the document that are entirely, obviously, about it. They wrote the whole machinery of it and still would not write its name. The man often called the father of the Constitution, James Madison, said it plainly in his own notes. The real division in that room was not big states against small states the way we are taught it. It was North against South, and it came down to slavery. And once I saw the shape of that first deal, I started seeing it everywhere. 1787 was not the end of it. It was the template. For the next 70 years, every time the slavery question came back, the country reached for the same tool. Another deal to avoid the fight. 1820, the Missouri Compromise. They drew a line straight across the map. Slavery allowed on this side of it, banned on that side. The hope was simple. Keep slavery below the line, freedom above it, and maybe the country never has to actually settle the argument. It bought about 30 years of quiet. 1850, another deal. California comes in free, and in exchange, the South gets a brutal new fugitive slave law, one that forced citizens in the North to help hunt down escaped human beings. Now everyone was implicated. Then the deals stop holding. In 1854, the old line gets torn up, and pro- and anti-slavery settlers start killing each other in Kansas. In 1857, the Supreme Court rules in the Dred Scott case that a black man has, in their words, no rights which the white man was bound to respect. By now, the pattern was impossible to miss. Every compromise bought a decade, and every one of them made the explosion bigger. Until 1861, when there were no deals left, and the country did the exact thing the founders had spent everything to prevent. It turned on itself. So now I had the machine. Deal by deal, decade by decade, I could see exactly how it worked. And once I saw it, I could not unsee it. But knowing how they did it still did not answer the thing I actually wanted to know. Was this a crime the country chose to commit, or a tragedy it had no way to avoid? And that is where the trail split on me. I went looking for one answer, and I found 2, both built by serious people, some of whom had been enslaved themselves. So I did the only honest thing. I followed each one as far as it would go. Here's the first road. Side 1 says this was not a country that reluctantly tolerated slavery and quietly felt bad about it. It says this was a country that actively built it, protected it, and got rich off it. And the silence was never neutrality. The silence was participation. Start with that 3/5 clause and follow where the power actually went. By counting enslaved people who had no say at all, the slave states got a permanent bonus in Congress and in the Electoral College, and they used it. For most of the country's first 70 years, slaveholders or their allies controlled the presidency, the Congress, and the Supreme Court, far out of proportion to the free population. Historians have a name for it: the slave power. The system was not looking away from slavery, it was rigged to protect it, by design. And it reached far past the South and far past the plantation. The cotton picked by enslaved hands fed textile mills in the North. It moved on Northern ships, was financed by Northern banks, insured by Northern companies. The entire American economy, top to bottom, had its hand in it. This was America's business. And they knew. This is the part that kills the excuse of, well, it was a different time. They knew. Jefferson himself called slavery a fire bell in the night, a thing that filled him with terror for the country's future. And then he went back to owning people. The words about liberty were not written in ignorance. They were written by men who went home to the people they claimed to own. And this was not only an argument I was having now, in hindsight, with all the answers laid out in front of me. There was a man who stood up and made this exact case while it was still happening. His name was William Lloyd Garrison. Garrison read those same 3 clauses: the 3/5 deal, the trade protection, the fugitive rule, and he did not see a flawed but fixable document. He saw a pact with evil. He called the Constitution a covenant with death and an agreement with hell. And on the 4th of July, 1854, in front of a crowd, he held up a copy of it and set it on fire. His position left no room for comfort. No union with slaveholders. The founding was rotten at the root, and every deal to hold the country together only fed the thing and bought it time. And here is the heart of it. From that view, keeping the country together was never a neutral act. Every single year of union was another year in which a real human being was born, sold, worked, and buried in bondage, so that a group of white men could keep the country they wanted. You do not get to call that a hard compromise. They made a deal to protect a crime, and the crime had a body count. That is the case for side 1. It is not a weak one. Then there is the second road, and this is the one a lot of people feel like they are not allowed to walk down. So walk it anyway, because serious people are standing on it, including some who escaped slavery themselves. The argument is this: without those compromises, there is no United States. And without a United States, there is no power on earth positioned to end slavery from the inside. The Union was not a betrayal of the anti-slavery cause. The Union was the anti-slavery cause's only weapon. Run the other version of 1787. The anti-slavery delegates stand on principle and refuse to deal. Fine, the convention collapses. Now you have 13 weak, divided states, or maybe 2 or 3 rival confederacies, with Britain, Spain, and France circling to carve them up. And here is the thing that matters. In that version, this side argues, there is no national government positioned to abolish slavery across all of them. Slavery might have lasted longer, perhaps much longer. Walking away in 1787 may have felt righteous, but walking away, by itself, offered no national path to abolition. And look at those same clauses through this lens. The 20-year limit on the slave trade. Side 1 sees a protection. This side sees the word limit. It was an expiration date written into the document, and the day it expired, in 1808, Congress banned the trade. To this side, that clause is evidence the founders expected slavery to shrink, not last forever. Even the silence reads differently here. Why did they refuse to write the word slavery? This side says it was shame. that they did not want the crime enshrined as permanent and normal in the nation's charter, so they buried it in euphemisms, hoping a future generation could cut it out without tearing up the whole document. And the strongest voice on this road was not a slaveholder looking for cover. It was a man who had been enslaved himself, Frederick Douglass. Douglass did not start here. At first, he agreed with Garrison completely. He called the Constitution a pro-slavery document and said so in public. And then he changed his mind. Out loud, in front of everyone. And he spent years arguing against the man he used to stand beside. Douglass came to call the Constitution a glorious liberty document. His argument went like this: the word slavery is not in it. Its principles are liberty and we the people. So do not hand this document to the slaveholders by declaring it theirs. Do not burn it and walk away. Pick it up and use it as a weapon against them. And a decade later, a lanky lawyer from Illinois made the same case on his way to the presidency. Abraham Lincoln argued that the founders never meant slavery to be permanent, that they had placed it, in his words, in the course of ultimate extinction, tolerated for now, expected to die. And here is the closing move for this road, the one that is hard to answer. You cannot abolish an institution inside a country that does not exist. It was a devil's bargain, yes, but that bargain built a machine that could eventually be turned against the institution it had protected. A single, strong union. A constitution that could be amended. And in 1865, that same document, the one Garrison burned, was amended to end slavery forever in the 13th Amendment. Purity in 1787 would have felt clean, and it would have freed no one. That is the case for side 2, and it is not a weak one either. So I walked both of those roads all the way to the end, and here is what was waiting there. They do not meet. Step back far enough, and you realize these two sides are not really arguing about 1787 at all. They are arguing about something much bigger. They are arguing about what America fundamentally is. One side sees a country built on its ideals: liberty, equality, ideals it betrayed at the very start and then spent 250 bloody years slowly, painfully, incompletely trying to live up to. In that story, the sin is real, but the ideals are the point, and the whole arc bends toward them. The other side sees a country built on its original crime, where the beautiful words were the cover story and slavery was the operating system running underneath, and where the wealth, the power, the borders we still live inside, all of it still carries that first stain. And this is not a history seminar. It is the exact fight tearing at American classrooms and politics right now. Is the true founding of this country 1619, the year slavery arrived, or is it 1776, the year of the ideals? It is the same argument Garrison and Douglass were having. We have just put a new date on it. And here is the part almost nobody wants to say out loud. The founding was a moral catastrophe. And that same compromised, cowardly, brilliant bargain those men struck may have been the only road that ever led to the country that could finally end it. Those two facts refused to sit together. And I could not make them. We want the founders to be heroes or villains. They will not be either. I went into this looking for an answer. I came out with something harder. The deals those men made to avoid the war did not prevent it. They only delayed it. And when the bill finally came due, it was paid in blood. Somewhere between 600,000 and 750,000 Americans died in the Civil War, more than every other American war put together. Both things are true, and they do not resolve. That is not me dodging the question. That is the answer. So the argument those men refused to have, we are still having. In school boards, in the fights over statues and monuments, on a debate stage in the year 2023, where a candidate still could not say the word. The silence that started in that room in Philadelphia is not history. It is an inheritance. I'm not here to tell you which side is right. I'm here to make sure that when you pick one, you understand the other. If this made you think, that is the channel. Subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.